The battlefield burned with smoke and fire. Craters tore the soil where grass once grew. Above, black clouds rumbled, echoing the screams of the dying. It was not a place for the weak. And yet, amid the chaos, she stood, tall, fierce, and covered, in armor that looked like it had been forged from the bones of gods. Her name was Kailari, the last princess of the Dravari Empire. Her armor, a sacred heirloom, weighed nearly as much as a war beast. But she never complained. It was a symbol of strength, of duty, of pride. She had never lost a battle, not until today. Blaster fire lit the sky. Her soldiers fell around her, turning once mighty lines into broken rubble. The enemy was unlike anything they had faced before. Fast, clever, unshaken by pain or fear. They had no banners, no horns, no declarations. Only a flag, with a single word scrawled on it in red: humanity. Kailari didn't understand it. These strange creatures from a far-off death world had entered the war 2 cycles ago. At first they were ignored. Small in number, physically weaker, but they adapted faster than her people believed possible. They learned the terrain. They studied her tactics. And then they struck harder than any army the stars had seen. Now her command post was falling. Her comms were dead. And worst of all, her limbs ached under the weight of the sacred armor. It was built for strength, not for speed. Against humans, speed was everything. She stumbled, armor grinding against rock. Her helmet was cracked. One eye bled. She could hear them closing in. Fast footfalls, voices in a language too rough and sharp for her ears to fully translate. Still, she stood up, blade in hand. If this was where she would fall, she would do so with honor. A figure broke through, the smoke running directly at her. No armor, just rough fabric and dirt-streaked skin. A human male, young, maybe not even a soldier. He didn't hold a gun, just a strange metal tool in one hand and a belt of gear around his waist. Kailari swung her blade wide, expecting him to dodge or counter. He didn't. He dropped low, slid under the arc of her sword, and rolled past her back. She turned, stunned. Before she could react, he leapt forward and tackled her, not to kill but to pin her. She roared, furious, twisting under him. But his hands were fast, precise, pulling at the locks and clasps of her armor. "What are you doing?" she shouted. In her language, confused. He didn't respond. He looked at her face. Really looked. And for a moment his expression shifted. From focus to something softer. Understanding. Pity. With a final tug, her chest plate fell loose. Her arms were free. The weight vanished like wind. And she gasped. Not from pain, but from shock. For the first time in her life, she felt light. The human stepped back and raised his hands slowly. "You can't win like that," he said in broken Dravari. "They'll tear you apart. Your armor is killing you." Kailari blinked. No enemy had ever tried to help her. No soldier had ever spoken to her like she mattered. Her hands trembled. She looked down at the fallen armor beside her, then at the human who could have killed her but didn't. The sky cracked again with thunder. But something inside her had already shifted. The war was not over, but something new had begun. Kailari had never run without armor before. Her body felt too light, too fast, like her feet were no longer touching the ground. Each step sent a shiver through her spine, reminding her how exposed she truly was. But somehow she kept running, and beside her the human ran too. His name, she learned after they escaped the battlefield, was Jace. He led her through a ruined trench, under twisted beams, past bodies she dared not look at. His hands were calloused, but sure. He didn't hesitate when he pulled her behind cover or helped her climb. He didn't speak much, just gave her glances, checking if she was still with him. They found a hidden bunker deep underground. The door was camouflaged under broken metal and rocks. Kailari never would have noticed it. Jace keyed in a code, and the panel slid open silently. Inside it was dry and quiet. There were blankets, rations, and light. He offered her water first. She took it, not out of trust, but because her throat burned with dust and blood. For a long time, they said nothing. The silence was louder than the war. Kalari finally broke it. "You could have killed me." Jace shrugged. "You weren't the enemy. Not anymore." She narrowed her eyes. "I led armies. I've destroyed colonies. You knew who I was." "I also saw you fall," he replied, looking at her directly. "I saw you bleed. That made you more than just an enemy." She didn't know how to answer that. Her people believed emotion was weakness. Hesitation was death. But this human didn't seem weak. He had moved faster than any Dravari soldier she'd faced. And he hadn't flinched when her blade passed inches from his neck. She studied him closely. His build was solid but lean. His eyes were tired, but focused. A long scar ran across his shoulder. He had no medals, no badge. Just that strange calm. "What are you really?" she asked. "Survivor," he said simply. Kalari leaned back against the bunker wall. Her arm ached where she had been struck. Without her armor, she could feel every bruise. But something else stirred inside her. Not fear, not pain, something like curiosity. "You said the armor was killing me." "It was," Jace said. "You were too slow. They were targeting your joints, your vents. You couldn't turn fast enough. You were never trained to fight like us." She frowned. "It is sacred. It was given to me by my ancestors." "I know. That's why it almost got you killed." Kalari wanted to argue. She wanted to defend her people, her pride, but she couldn't deny the truth. She had been losing. And this human, this stranger, had saved her with nothing but speed and instinct. Later, as the ground above shook with distant artillery, Jace prepared a small heat pack and passed it to her. Her fingers touched his for a second. She pulled away quickly. He didn't react. She finally asked, "Why did you really help me?" He looked at her and spoke slowly, carefully. "Because you didn't deserve to die like that. And maybe, there's more to this war than just orders and flags." Kalari looked away. His words settled deep inside her. She wasn't sure if they hurt or healed. Outside, the war raged on. Inside, two enemies sat in silence, and for the first time in her life, Kalari wasn't sure who she was fighting for anymore. The next morning, Kalari woke to the sound of movement. Jace was already up, adjusting the bunker's ventilation system. His sleeves were rolled, showing more scars along his arms. He worked fast, efficient like a soldier, but calm like a farmer. It confused her. She sat up slowly, her muscles sore. Her back ached from sleeping without armor. For years she had rested upright in rigid battle posture. Last night had been the first time she had truly slept. Jace noticed her stir. "There's food. It's not royal, but it won't kill you." Kalari raised an eyebrow. "You assume I'm still royalty." He smirked. "You still carry yourself like one." She didn't respond, but she did accept the food. It was dry and tasteless, but warm. She ate in silence, watching him. The bunker's lights flickered. Dust danced in, the air like lost memories. "Where are your people?" she asked. Jace sat down across from her. "Gone, or scattered. Commands broken. After your last orbital strike, most of us went underground." "So you're hiding?" "No," he said calmly. "I'm waiting." "For what?" Jace's eyes met hers. "For someone to stop this madness." Kalari didn't know how to answer. She had grown up on warships, trained with swords before she could walk, ordered to conquer in the name of honor. Peace was a word used in surrender speeches, but this man spoke it like it had weight. Later that day they ventured outside. The air was sharp and cold. Smoke still curled from broken machines and distant blasts echoed through the mountains. Jace handed her a simple jacket. She wrapped it around herself, feeling oddly light again. Strange how human cloth felt freer than her empire's sacred armor. They walked through the ruins of a small outpost. Bodies lay still. Some human, some Dravari. The sight no longer shocked her, but this time it felt heavier. She saw a young Dravari warrior slumped against a stone wall. His blade was still, in hand. His armor had melted into his skin from an energy blast. Kailari knelt beside him. She didn't cry, but her jaw clenched. "He was one of mine," she whispered. Jace said nothing. He only placed a hand on her shoulder and waited. She looked up at him. "You don't hate us, do you?" He shook his head. "I hate the ones who gave the orders, not the ones forced to follow them." Kailari stared at the fallen warrior. She remembered his name. Arik. He had trained under her. He had once brought her rare fruit from a jungle world as a sign of loyalty, and now he was gone. Not because of her enemies, but because she had sent him forward, believing their armor made them invincible. That night, back in the bunker, she didn't eat. She didn't speak much. Jace didn't push her. Before they slept, he said something that stayed with her. "You can choose who you want to be now." She turned to him. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because being someone else means letting go of who I was, and that would make me no one." Jace gave her a tired smile. Sometimes being no one is the only way to become something new. Kailari lay down and closed her eyes, but her mind raced. Her armor had been her identity, her rank, her pride, her purpose. But now it sat in the corner, dusty and useless. She had never been more confused, but also never more alive. And she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't go back. The bunker grew colder with each day that passed. The power core hummed softly, but it couldn't keep the chill away. Still, neither of them left. Outside, the war shifted. Kailari could hear it in the distance, fewer explosions, more silence. That kind of silence scared her more. She and Jace spoke more now. It wasn't always about the war. Sometimes it was about stars, food, or the creatures they'd seen on other planets. She learned that Jace had once been a scout, not a soldier. He had trained to survive alone. That's why he was still alive. Kailari told him stories of her homeworld, of tall black mountains and silver moons that never stopped moving. She told him about the armor ceremonies, the blood markings, and how her people believed in fate above all. Jace listened carefully, like every word mattered. No one had ever listened to her like that before. One afternoon, Kailari asked the question that had been burning inside her. "What do you see when you look at me now?" Jace was cleaning a piece of tech. He paused, but didn't look upright. Away. "I see someone who still carries the weight," he said, "even without the armor." She didn't know how to feel about that. Was it a compliment or a warning? Later, while gathering supplies from an abandoned camp, they found a broken comm device. Jace fixed it in a few minutes using parts from his belt. Static poured out of the speaker, followed by a voice Kailari recognized. It was General Korvek, her former commander. He was still alive. "All surviving Dravari forces," the voice crackled. "We regroup at Delta Crater. Resistance is weak. Victory is near. The princess must return." Kailari froze. Jace turned the comm off. "Sounds like they want their symbol back." She nodded slowly. "They think I'm still one of them." He didn't say anything. "I should go," she added. "To fight?" "No. To stop them." Jace raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll listen?" "They'll listen to my armor." She pulled it from the corner of the bunker. It was dented, scratched, and stained with ash. But the core still glowed faintly, a sign of her bloodline. "I thought it was killing." "You," Jace said quietly. "It was," she answered. "But maybe it can save others now." That night, Kailari began repairing the armor. She didn't plan to wear it in battle. She planned to wear it as a weapon of peace, a symbol. Jace helped her. He didn't ask many questions, just handed her tools and nodded when she needed reassurance. As the sun rose on the 6th day, the armor was ready. Not perfect, but whole. Kailari looked at her reflection in a shard of metal. The armor looked the same, but the eyes staring back were different. No longer cold, no longer blind. Jace handed her a small tracker. It'll get you near the crater. After that, it's on you. She clipped it to her belt. Will you come with me? She asked. Jace shook his head. They need to see you, not me. Kalari stared at him, uncertain. You think I can change anything? I think you already have, he said. She looked down at her hands, strong but shaking. She had always known what to do before. This time, she walked into the unknown. As she stepped outside, the wind hit her face. The world smelled of war, but the sky was clear. She walked toward the crater alone. But she no longer felt alone, and though the armor returned to her shoulders, its weight felt different now. Because this time, it wasn't holding her down, it was lifting her up. Delta Crater was no longer a battlefield. It was a camp, a massive metallic scar carved into the planet's surface. Smoke drifted from damaged carriers. Hundreds of Dravari soldiers moved like shadows, quiet and tired. Some still stood tall, in their armor. Others limped, broken but not defeated. Kalari walked into the crater alone. She wore her full armor again, but different now. The metal was polished just enough to reflect her past, but marked with new lines. She had carved them, herself. A message not in words but in action. Dravari scouts spotted her first. They froze, unsure whether to kneel or raise their weapons. She passed without speaking. At the heart of the crater, General Korvek stood before a command screen. He was older than when she had last seen him, eyes deeper, skin tighter. His armor still gleamed untouched by doubt. Princess, he said, voice steady. We feared you were dead. I was close, she replied. He smiled thinly. Then perhaps the ancestors spared you for this final victory. Kalari stared at the screen. Human bases, troop lines, attack routes. A full invasion plan. You plan to strike again. They're weak, Korvek said. Their leadership is scattered. We must finish this war before they regroup. She didn't answer. Your presence here is a blessing, he continued. Your armor will rally the warriors, they follow strength. Kalari's hand tightened at her side. Do they still follow blind strength? Korvek frowned. What are you suggesting? She stepped closer, her voice sharpened. I've seen their side. I've seen their dead. I've seen a human save my life when he had every reason not to. Korvek's eyes darkened. You were captured. No, she said. I was rescued. Not because I was royalty, not because I was strong, but because I was broken and he didn't turn away. Gasps rippled through the nearby soldiers. Some took a step back. Others stood straighter. This war is not about honor anymore, Kalari continued. It's about pride, and pride has cost us too much. Korvek's voice rose. You speak like a traitor. I speak like someone who's finally thinking, she replied. If we keep fighting, we both lose. Your maps may show victory, but your camp is filled with ghosts. The general moved forward. You would have us kneel to them? I would have us stop burying our own, she said. A long silence followed. Korvek turned to the crowd. She has lost her way. Her time with the humans has poisoned her thoughts. Kalari raised her voice. If seeing your enemy as a person is poison, then I welcome the sickness. Some soldiers began murmuring. Others lowered their heads. Doubt had entered the crater. Korvek pointed at her. Remove your armor. You no longer deserve it. Kalari did something no one expected. She took off her helmet. Her face was tired, bruised, humanized. And then she did something more dangerous. She smiled. To those who still believe in more than bloodshed, she said, follow me. Not as your princess, not as your commander, but as someone willing to lay down a weapon for something greater. No one moved at first. Then a young soldier stepped forward. She removed her gloves. Then another unbuckled his chest plate. Korvek shouted, You shame us all. Kalari turned to him. Then maybe shame is what we need to feel. And with that, She walked away from the command post, not in defeat, but in silence. A silence that echoed louder than any war cry. Behind her, footsteps followed. Kailari didn't expect many to follow her. But by the time she reached the edge of the crater, over 30 soldiers walked behind her. Most were young. Some were wounded. All had eyes full of questions. They didn't speak as they walked. They just watched her. Some still wore pieces of armor. Others had removed it completely, letting the cold wind touch their skin. It wasn't rebellion. It was a decision. They camped at the edge of a canyon. Kailari stood alone by the fire, watching the sparks fly upward. She thought of Jace. She wondered if he was watching the sky, thinking about her too. A soldier approached. Her name was Valen, one of Kailari's former elite guards. "You really believe they'll listen to you?" Valen asked. Kailari didn't look away from the fire. "No, but if I don't speak, nothing changes." Valen sat beside her. "I lost my sister in the last raid. I was ready to burn every human world I found." "What changed?" Kailari asked. "You did." In the distance, sensors picked up movement. Kailari stood quickly. She scanned the rocks. One of the scouts called out. "Approaching vehicle, small, not armed." Kailari stepped forward. Her hand hovered over her blade. Then the vehicle stopped, and the door opened. Jace stepped out. He was covered in dust, but alive. His eyes searched the camp until they landed on her. He raised a hand slowly. Kailari walked to him. The others stayed back. "You followed me," she said softly. "I had to," he replied. "Didn't want you to think you were alone." She let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "They want peace," he said. "At least some of them do. I spoke to commanders hiding near the southern pass. They're tired too. Will they listen?" "They'll listen to you." Kailari nodded. "Then we meet halfway." The next day, Kailari and Jace stood together on neutral ground. A wide, cracked valley that once held rivers, now dry from war. On one side, Dravari. On the other, humans. Each army watched from afar. Ready, but not attacking. Kailari stepped forward first, her helmet in her hand, her armor trimmed down to its lightest form. She was no longer a towering figure of fear. She was real. Jace walked beside her, unarmed. A human officer stepped out to meet them. His uniform was torn but clean, his voice calm but careful. "You're the Dravari commander?" "Not anymore," Kailari said. "Just someone who's tired of digging graves." He looked at Jace, then back at her. "You came unarmed?" "Came with truth," she said. "That's more dangerous." There was a pause. Then he gave a small nod. "Then talk." Kailari spoke. She told them about the cost of pride, about her armor, about her fall, about how a human saved her not with a weapon, but with compassion. She didn't ask for surrender. She asked for understanding. When she finished, silence followed. Then the human officer said something unexpected. "My daughter died in a blast 2 months ago. She was 12. Kailari's heart dropped. She was scared of Dravari stories. He continued. But she loved stars. If peace means no one else's daughter has to fear the sky, then maybe it's worth trying. He extended his hand. Kailari looked at it. Slowly, she reached out and took it. Across the valley, 2 armies watched. But for the first time, no one lifted a weapon. The agreement was fragile, like a thin layer of ice stretched across boiling water. It could break at any moment, but it held, at least for now. Both sides pulled their forces back slightly. Not a full retreat, just enough to create breathing space. Scouts watched from hills. Drones buzzed in the clouds. Everyone waited to see who would move first. Kailari spent her nights drawing maps in the dust, not of battle routes, but of supply chains, refugee paths, and safe zones. She worked, with Jace, the human officer named Ren, and even some of her former soldiers. She had never spoken so much to people she once called enemies. It was strange. The more she listened, the more the humans sounded like her own people. Tired, lost, grieving. Warriors on both sides carried the same haunted look in their eyes. War had not made them different. It had made them the same. One evening, Jace brought her a small metal disc. "It's a transmitter," he said. "If you speak into it, we can broadcast across both armies." Kelari stared at the disc like it was heavier than her armor. "I'm not a speaker," she said. "You already are," Jace replied. "They just need to hear it from your own voice." She hesitated, then took it. That night, as stars blinked quietly above the valley, Kelari stood before a signal drone and held the disc in her hand. She spoke. Not like a queen, not like a warrior, but like someone who had seen both sides of the storm. She told them about her armor, how it had been her pride, her prison, her lesson. She told them about the human who removed it, about the soldier who showed mercy, about the battlefield that became a moment of change. She didn't beg for peace. She didn't demand it either. She offered it. The signal spread across both camps. Some turned away. Others listened in silence. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A group of Dravari soldiers approached the neutral zone. They carried no weapons. Behind them, humans came too. No orders, no flags, just steps toward something different. They met at the riverbed where no water flowed, and they talked. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments, old wounds reopened, accusations, but no one drew a blade. Kelari watched from the cliffside with Jace at her side. "This isn't peace," she said. "No," he replied. "It's something better. It's a start." She turned to him. "Why did you follow me? Even when I didn't believe in myself?" Jace smiled. "Because I saw something you didn't." "What was that?" He looked at her, not like a soldier, but like someone who saw beyond scars and armor. "I saw who you really are when the armor comes off." Kelari didn't speak for a moment. The wind moved gently through her hair. She felt bare again, but not weak, vulnerable, and free. They stood in silence as the first human and Dravari children were brought together near the edge of the camp. They played with rocks, their laughter cutting through the heavy air. Kelari whispered, "Maybe they'll be the ones who never learn to fear each other." Jace nodded. "If we're lucky." For the first time since she was a child, Kelari felt something she couldn't explain. Hope, and this time she didn't need armor to carry it. The air smelled different now. It no longer carried the bitter scent of ash and burning metal. Instead, there was dust, earth, and the faintest hint of green. Somewhere beyond the mountains, life was trying to grow again. Kelari stood at the edge of the valley, looking over the camps. Humans and Dravari tents sat side by side. Not every soldier had accepted the change, but enough had. Enough to stop the killing. Enough to make space for silence. Her armor sat behind her, folded carefully in a case. She hadn't worn it in days. She didn't need it anymore. When soldiers saw her now, they didn't salute. They nodded, like equals, like people. Jace walked up beside her. His uniform was the same, but he had washed the dust from his face. He looked younger now, even though the war had aged them both. "They're calling you the Starbreaker," he said with a smirk. Kelari raised an eyebrow. "Is that supposed to be praise?" "They say you broke tradition, broke command, broke the endless cycle." She gave a soft laugh. "I didn't break the stars. I just chose to stop chasing them with a blade." They walked through the camp, together. Children played with sticks. Former enemies shared food. A human and Dravari medic compared healing techniques over a patient who chuckled at their arguments. There were still tensions, still long stares and cautious steps, but no one reached for a weapon. That alone felt like a miracle. Later that evening, a council meeting was held in the center of the valley. A circle of stones had become their table. Dravari leaders and human commanders sat together for the first time. No titles, no generals, just voices. Kelari didn't lead the meeting. She sat at the side, next to Jace, watching as others spoke. She didn't need to command. She had already done her part. They discussed borders, treaties, recovery plans, how to rebuild what had been burned. When it was her turn to speak, she stood slowly. "I wore armor most of my life," she said. "I thought it made me stronger, but it only hid me. It stopped me from seeing who I really was, and worse, it stopped me from seeing all of you." She looked around the circle. "We cannot undo what's been done, but we can decide what we become next. Not as Dravari, not as humans, but as survivors." The crowd was silent. Then, one by one, heads nodded. After the meeting, Jace handed her something small. A carved figure made from burnt stone. It looked like a Dravari warrior, helmet removed, arms open, standing without fear. "I made it," he said, "to remember who you are." Kailari turned the figure in her hand. For a moment, her chest tightened, not from pain, from something far more rare, gratitude. "You helped me take the armor off," she said quietly. He stepped closer. "No, you took it off yourself. I just reminded you there was something underneath." She met his gaze. For once, she didn't feel like a warrior. She felt like a woman, and that didn't scare her anymore. The next day, Kailari helped plant the first seed in the valley. It was a simple tree brought from her homeworld. Beside it, a human child buried a crystal from Earth. Together, they watered the ground. Together, they watched the dirt hold, and together they waited for the roots to grow. Not as conquerors, not as enemies, but as something new.